Well, good morning, everyone. Big week this week, isn't it? It's Thanksgiving week. And for a lot of us, it's time where we see family or friends, or maybe we just even pause and think and thank the Lord. But I thought this week, we're going to spend the week talking about both Thanksgiving and the biblical basis for what we'll be doing. I think you'll find it quite valuable. But at the very least, we're going to be reminded that the Lord is the one who gives us good things. Hey, let me just give you a verse for today, and then I want to talk today about the history of Thanksgiving. In Psalm 100, verse 4, it says, "Give thanks to the Lord and praise his name." We're going to spend one day looking at lots of verses, but this is a good one for us today because it just says simply, give thanks to the Lord and praise his name. Psalm 100, verse 4. Well, I am that we come and we live in a country that does that, has an official holiday called Thanksgiving, when that is exactly what we're asked to do. And I believe most of us will do that. Well, how did Thanksgiving get started? And I know we vaguely know the story, but the year was 1620. And there were very few colonies in the New World. Jamestown was not working out very well for lots of different reasons. But it was 1620 in September that a small ship called the Mayflower set out from England with 102 passengers going to the New World. Really, they were aiming for Virginia, but obviously they landed Virginia was much bigger in those days, but they landed up in Massachusetts. It took them 66 days. What a treacherous trip. It's supposed to only, and for most people, it only lasted half of that time. But it was a stormy crossing and very bad. They land in Plymouth, what now is Plymouth, Massachusetts. And of course, Plymouth Rock. And have you ever seen that? It's not a whole lot. It's pretty small, but they named it after their place of origin. Well, that first winter was a rough one. And for the pilgrims that came, and these were people that wanted religious liberty, they wanted to govern themselves, and yet they still viewed themselves as part of England, but they wanted self-government also. Well, that first winter was very rough, and most of them lived on the ship through the winter. As bad as that was, and as small as that was, but about half of the pilgrims died that first winter. But when the spring came, they started to build the settlement on land, of course. In March of that 1621 now, a member of the local Native American tribe greeted them in English. They were amazed this man knew English. And do you remember his name? Squanto. Squanto. That probably does ring a bell with you. He was a member of the Pawtuxet tribe. And he this is how God works. He almost always, don't you see it later, how he uses bad for good? Well, Squanto had been kidnapped a long time earlier by an English sea captain, sold into slavery, which of course is terrible. But God had a great plan for Squanto. And during that time, he learned English. But after escaping London, returning to his homeland, when he met the Pilgrims, they didn't know how to get by in their new land, so he taught them how to do it, how to cultivate corn, how to get sap from the maple trees, how to catch fish, and basically how to survive. God had prepared Squanto for such a mission as that. Well, the Pilgrims did quite well, and they had a very successful corn harvest that year. And so it was in November of 1621 that they held their first Thanksgiving meal together. And he did it with the Native American tribes who had helped them so much. And they had a warm friendship. And you might have heard the name of Massasoit, the tribal leader. And he invited them. They brought 5 deer for them all to eat. And the Pilgrims supplied the rest, I believe. Their feast lasted 3 days. Boy, it started off with a bang, didn't it? How the first Thanksgiving, 3 days of feasting. And it was great. There were 90 of the American native people and quite a few less of the Pilgrims. But they had a thing, and they declared, "Thanks be to the goodness of God. We are so far from want, and we want you all to be partakers of our plenty," they called it. So they had a great time together. And you know what? What a blessing. It went along that way, and there were every now and then someone would declare a Thanksgiving. I believe the Pilgrims continued to do it yearly. But it wasn't until 1789 that George Washington issued the first American United States proclamation of Thanksgiving, 1789. That stayed in effect off and on again, but nothing consistent. It wasn't, do you know what president actually made Thanksgiving a national holiday? I think if you thought it through, you might well guess. It was Abraham Lincoln in 1863. It was the height of the Civil War. And he issued a proclamation that said all Americans were to ask God to ask for his tender care, all those who have become widows, orphans, mourners because of the lamentable civil strife, and to heal the wounds of the nation. And he scheduled Thanksgiving for the final Thursday of November. And that's what it was, and that's how it is today. Franklin Roosevelt tried to change it to a week later and met such resistance that he went back to the 4th Thursday of November. You know what, though? It's not the date on which it's held. I like that it's consistent, though, and that'll be this Thursday. But aren't you thankful that we live in a country that has this types of Christian roots, and that Thanksgiving is celebrated by national proclamation to thank our Lord for his blessing? It started, yes, with the Pilgrims, but there's so many others today in this year. So I hope you'll tune back in. Let's be very thankful this week and look forward to however we celebrate our Thanksgiving this Thursday. God bless, and I'll see you back here tomorrow as we talk and find out what the Bible has to say on Thanksgiving. God bless.
Oh, come to the Father through Jesus the Son, and give